Nvidia GeForce is kicking off some kind of LAN event. If you have a GeForce graphics card, at least a 10 series or more, you'll be able to get into this event and I guess play through something, some kind of missions they're setting up, and you should be able to get WoW or Diablo related drops for your for the games. I don't know what this is going to be. Nobody really knows yet. But these drops also include for Elder Scrolls Online, Fallout 76, and more. So interesting stuff here. Nobody knows what these are going to be just yet, but you're going to have to download the Nvidia GeForce app or GeForce Now Experience app. Thank you, Sarah, for the follow. Welcome to our Scourge. And once you've got that done, basically you're going to click on some kind of LAN mission. There'll be 50 continuous minutes of missions you could do, and then you claim your reward via the Nvidia app, GeForce Experience, or GeForce Now apps. So this is some kind of weird drop event, something going on. You can check the dates that you're going to want to keep an eye out for this. It looks like, I believe, are January 4th, 4:30 Pacific time. This thing will kick off, and it'll last until January 6th. Nobody knows what the drops are going to be yet. They just know the titles of the games. Grizz, thank you for the Prime sub 2 months in a row. Death Knight of our Scourge. So if you're a NVIDIA enjoyer, 10 series or higher, as I said, then you'll be able to compete in this event. Moving on to some more direct related WoW news. Oh, what is this? Interrupting the news for what? This is it, boys. This is the final week. The winner will be announced on Friday. If you haven't gotten in here, get in here. What am I talking about? The $100 BNet balance giveaway. All you got to do is get in this stream for 1 hour. Watch 1 hour of the shittiest stream on Twitch. That is my stream, and you will get 1 point to enter to the giveaway. Every hour beyond that is another point to enter in. If you're subbed, you'll get 5 extra entries. This is it, boys. The time is now. Get your dicks ready to go. Mythic Plus and 11.0.7 class changes. Important stuff to get into here. So Blizzard released a survey, an interesting survey, asking players if they would basically want to change up Mythic Plus in its entirety. And by that I mean remove the timer and create a death counter instead. Essentially, they would become what a delve is today, where if you die a certain amount of times, you fail the delve. Well, that would be the only way you'd fail a Mythic Plus. There would no longer be a timer related to them, and instead, it would just be a death counter for the group. Now, I know, yes, please, before we all jump on this one and take it for a ride, Daddy, the thing you got to be careful with is it could also breed toxicity in the other direction. If a player dies by accident, or people start dying, making mistakes, you could see people just getting totally cussed out and the toxic side of things really come out. Now, of course, toxicities are already bred via the timer, and currently, a couple deaths don't really hurt you, right? A couple deaths, 15 seconds each time. You'll still be able to time it if you got a good group and you're moving fast. Now, this would also change really the dynamic of Mythic Plus keys, because what would happen is if you have a death counter instead of a timer, you're going to have much slower pulls. If a tank is smart and if a group is smart, you're going to pull smaller pulls. Sometimes you're going to wait for cooldowns to come up. So this could lead to longer runs. So be ready for a Mythic Plus maybe to take about an hour rather than 30 to 40 minutes if you're typically timing it now. So smart is greater than fast. Yeah, that's how this will be. This will be the play. Now for me, would I rather see a death counter than what we currently have? Yes. But for me, the ultimate would be instead keep the timers, right? Keep the timers how they are, but don't give penalties for deaths. We don't want to see 15-second ticks on the timer for a death is a lot, and it hurts. So take away the death timer souls, keep the timers how they are, and then at the end of it, if the timer finally closes, right? If the timers run out and the group has failed the timer and somebody leaves, allow people to invite other people back in. That's what I want to see, because I know a lot of people still want to complete a key for a vault, right? They still want that vault slot, and then you got the IO pushers who don't give a shit once the timer's not going to be hit. They'll dip. So for me, the way that they could do it is you don't have a penalty for deaths. You still have a timer, which keeps it, within that 30 to 40-minute range, but there's no penalty for it, and you can invite people once the timer has hit its end. Now, and I don't know if that's implementable. I don't know if that's what people want. But if they can't do that, I would rather see a death counter than our current implemented system. Now we have a death counter. Yeah, well, we do. We do have a death counter, but the thing is, it depends on how many deaths they're going to give you. Because as of right now, 1 or 2 deaths, nobody gives a shit. If some mage keeps dying every other pull, you don't really care, because at the end of the day, most likely if the group's moving quickly, you'll overcome that. But if they got a death counter with, say, 10 deaths allowed in the group, and this mage has died in the first 5 or 6 pulls 3 times, yeah, that's going to start to breed some toxicity and animosity towards this mage for dying so many times, and people are going to start to get worried that you're going to break the key. Not to mention, imagine you get into that final boss fight with one death left, right? Picture that. Right now, if you get into a final boss fight and you got 10 minutes or so left, there's really no pressure. You're going to get that shit done whether people die or not. But if you're entering that final boss fight and you're worried about this freaking noob who's been dying the entire time, and now you're going in with one death left, going into a boss fight, and this guy just completely doesn't do a mechanic, yeah, you're going to lead to some really angry players, some pissed off people, cussing, all kinds of, God knows what they're going to call this person. It's going to get nasty real quick. So we got to be careful. I don't know if they'd probably make it a group death counter rather than an individual death counter. We'll have to see how that all balances out, and how many deaths would they give a group. I could imagine 10. I would imagine 10 deaths would probably be something realistic to try to avoid, depending on what level key you're doing, but we'll have to see how all this balances out. For now, Blizzard is at least taking feedback and listening to people on the surveys here, so we'll see what all that means. Speaking of staying alive, maybe, or doing more damage, 11.0.7. It's hitting this week, and we're going to get a bunch of class buffs, it looks like. So if your class is on this list, you are getting buffed. Here we go. Let's get into some of this. An Unholy Death Knight. Apocalypse getting an increase of 30% damage. Rotting Touch will hit the strike. The target for 60% was 50%. Death Coil damage, 8% increase. Scourge Strike and Vampiric Strike increased by 10%. Demon Hunter. Fellblade increased by 10%. Hunt's initial damage increased by 10%. And then Havoc. Chaos Strike damage increased by 10, and Demon's Bite increased by 10. So these are all buffs across the board right now. Like I said, these classes are getting some love. Devastation Evoker. Here, all damage increased by 4%, doesn't apply to PvP. And then Pyre damage increased by 20%. Some pretty big buffs. Look at this one. Marksmanship Hunter. Trick Shot percentage increased to 75 was 65. That's pretty darn big. And then you got a bunch of other buffs here to their abilities for Dark Ranger. You got Black Arrow, Shadow Surge, and Bleak Power. 25, 25, and 15%. And then Razor Fragments AoE damage increased by 35%. Right now, I would say Marksmanship does need the most love for Hunters. It's probably the least played of the specs. And it's honestly, I don't play Hunter right now, but it was always my favorite. I always thought the Marksmanship fantasy was more my style. I'm not a big, pet or furry kind of guy, so that's why I always played it that way. But for the others, I'm glad Survival and Bestiality or Beast Mastery is doing really good right now. Paladin, we got Holy. Veneration now transfers 225% of the damage done into healing was to 200%, so that's a nice little buff. Saved by the Lights Absorb is increased by 15%, does not apply to PvP. Consecrate damage increased by 30%, that's pretty big. Paladin's been using Consecration, that's not bad, for Holy at least. Lightsmith, Tempered in Battle no longer activates while the Paladin is within crowd control. So Tempered in Battle no longer activates if its target is in Cyclone, Detainment, Imprison, or Diamond Ice Freeze. So I guess that's going to stop it from breaking traps. So that's pretty good, rather than, breaking characters that are currently locked up for whatever reason. Maybe you're trying to run through a Mythic Plus and get some characters, some tunes locked up, and then this shit happens and it breaks the locks. Survival is being treated well this expansion. It sure is, yeah. Survival Hunter is doing really good. Priest, we got Holy. Flash Heal increased by 15%. Holy Fire increased by 15%. That's pretty good. Shaman, Restoration. The cost of mana for your Surge Totem was reduced by 25%, so a nice little resource bump there for you. Warlocks, Affliction. Okay, Affliction needed some love. Let's see what they did here. Haunt damage increased by 75%. Focus Malignancy causes Malefic Rupture to deal 25% increased damage to the target, was 15, so that's pretty good. Oblivion damage increased by 25%. These are huge buffs, actually. Xavius's Gambit now increases the damage of Unstable Affliction by 20, was 15. Perpetual Unstability damage increased by 25%, and then Siphon Life corruption damage by 30, was 20. So there you go. The rest of these are PvP related. Looks like Blood and Frost are getting, for DKs, getting some nice buffs here. Druid, we got Balance and Restoration getting buffed. That's pretty good. Evoker, Augmentation getting a little bit of a nerf here for PvP. Damage reduction and Malting increase, so a little bit of a buff there. So kind of balancing out a little bit. Mage, Sun Fury now increased damage. Okay, that's good. Monk, Mistweaver getting a little bit of buff here. Windwalker also getting a bunch of buffs. Priest Discipline getting a nice little buff. It looks like Shaman, Elemental, Restoration getting buffed, Warlock Destruction getting buffed, and Warrior Arms and Fury, or should I say Furry, getting nice little buffs. So that's pretty good. Across the board, a bunch of buffs for these classes. I'll link these notes in the chat and below for the people who are watching this on YouTube. Pretty good for some of these classes. Some of them did need love, and it looks like some of the ones that did need love are in fact getting the love, that's for sure.